Danielle, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So, what we like to do is just get people to actually introduce themselves first, and rather than me do that for you. So, coming from your own words, who are you? What do you do? What are you working on right now?
I'm Danielle. I run the robotics headhunting team here with Lawrence Harvey. So, in short form, recruiters by trade, recruiters by nature. And yeah, I run a UK European headhunting team, and then we have some offices in the States as well who run our headhunting sourcing capacity for us. So, I work with any team across the robotics industry from humanoids, autonomous mobile robots, drones, subsea, you name it. And that's yeah, like all roles from commercial through to R&D, hardware, software, the lot.
That's super interesting. I literally have never met anybody who works in recruitment, especially within like the sort of humanoid robotics space. So you're just going to have to, for the purpose of people watching this, explain exactly what robotics is. What are humanoids? What is it that you're hiring within essentially?
Of course. So it's not just humanoids as robotic realm, but that being a massive space for investments and growth at the moment. It's an area I thought I'd be silly to not throw myself headfirst into. So humanoid robotics are things that relate to human form. It doesn't necessarily have to have 5 fingers or 2 legs, but ideally that's kind of how most organizations are phasing things out. Um, Again, a lot of those industries being industrial automation, warehousing, logistics, where we're seeing a lot of that uptick. So recruiting jobs from hardware engineers, R&D researchers, people with navigation, perception, kind of tool and technology stacks, robotic manipulation, things like that on a tech side. Again, all the way through to commissioning and deployment of robots on those field engineering pieces. So yeah, I mean, humanoids are biped robots, so like 2 feet most naturally. And then you've also got quadrupeds, which are four-wheeled like dog-style robots you see. There's also the teams of like who do autonomous mobile robots, so delivery robots, shuttles for autonomous vehicles. All of that is really encompassed into robotics and autonomous systems. So it's the
Nice.
software, hardware, AI integration piece.
And it's funny actually because I was listening to another podcast the other day, and it was with an investor, and she was saying that essentially automobiles, vehicles, autonomous vehicles are going to be absolutely huge in the future. And is that what you're seeing from a recruitment point of view? In terms of the kind of technicians that you're needing to place or hire for.
I think the automotive market per se is in a really interesting space. Not so because of the US, Tesla, and tariffs, but also safety regulations and standards. So, what is acceptable in the US probably isn't feasible in Germany, let alone over here in the UK. So there's a lot of safety and like legislation policies that still need to be worked through for what I think personally is going to be a mass adoption. Again, with it being quite new and the UK being naturally not the best at risk and adopting new things, I think we will be a little bit further behind than some teams in releasing them. I mean, there are companies up in Aberdeen or like teams down in Milton Keynes who are releasing autonomous shuttles out of airports and things like that. But yeah, it's not mass production of self-driving cars on the road yet. I do think there's a strong roadmap for it, but we need to get there. I think it's the same as EV charging. It was mentioned, 15, 20 years ago, but, the uptick was in the past 5 or so years with that mass production. I think it will be the same with automotive and autonomous vehicles. But the tooling and technology that engineers have from working in automotive companies is really transferable into robotics, not just autonomous mobility.
Why are we so behind? Like, why is the UK so behind industrially? Is it, when it comes to innovation and things? Because we used to be so far ahead the rest of the world, and now we're sort of like fifth, sixth in terms of innovation, in terms of the leading the charge in the world. Like we're nowhere near. Like definitely the US, and we're seeing a lot in the Far East as well. Why is the UK just so far behind this?
I mean, definitely like a few angles to go out with this. One, definitely the risk adoption. Like the US and like the Far East and Asian countries typically are way more open to new things, mass production of change, that innovation drive of completely changing how we see something. I like, if you think about it, back in the day when Tesco's were like first implementing self checkouts, that was already in like the US and China years ago. It wasn't
Mm,
new. We just took so long to get there. We can't always blame the government, but partially got to blame our government just a little bit over the years with all the changes and no policies actually going through and being, kept promises on, but government's government. Again, there's a big thing on the funding side. Like the UK, look, we're a great little country, but do we have the space and the size, these massive factories and development and deployment centres and things like that? And when you've got China already providing or manufacturing all the actuators, well, it's cheaper to purchase them mass and bring them over than build a
mm,
whole new facility to build that from zero again. Some of it is people just getting into the game earlier, so that mass adoption has fallen through quicker. Yeah, some is policy legislation changes, and again, yeah, funding and investments. I think, Tesla, massive money. The robotics companies
mm.
across the US and Asia, massive investments up to like 400 million in single rounds. You don't see that with UK scale ups. It's a few million here and there. It's funded out of a research agency or an education institute more so.
So if we're looking at the UK, we're not exactly the innovation hub of the world anymore then, but obviously the places like the US, China, some of the other Asian countries as well, are we becoming more of an offshore kind of talent hub for the bigger countries then, basically? Is that potentially something you're seeing with, we can work and live from anywhere now, and that there's not so many borders as such in sort of like the digital age. So are we in the UK best positioned to be that kind of offshore talent for other countries, do you think? Or is there still a massive opportunity in the UK, do you believe?
I do still believe there's massive opportunity in the UK, especially when I know quite a few, or not to name anyone, but I know quite a few teams who were a European scale up who are building their UK entity in the UK or want to build out a new production line, so are doing so in the UK. So it's not that we don't have the expansion capabilities, but it's more that we're being expanded into the UK instead of building out
Mm.
from the UK. So it's cool European companies who are building a new office than UK companies that are growing.
That's really interesting, actually, because I'd not thought of it like that. And it was just as you were talking, then I was thinking, I'd seen a post from someone saying that like Sweden essentially is becoming almost like the new tech hub of Europe, and a lot of startups are growing in Sweden and Finland specifically as well, which is crazy. What are the biggest verticals within sort of like what you're hiring across, the industries that you're hiring across? Like, what are the biggest verticals that you're seeing, the most amount of resource required for?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot on deployment tech and like robot technicians, those who are actually going out to customer sites, installing, commissioning, deploying, troubleshooting, going through a customer solutions project vibe. So, I mean, it's hard to get people to go to office as it is, let alone traveling across the country or across the world to do your job for probably not much extra pay.
Mm.
So that's like I'm seeing a lot of growth, and especially from like new deployment centers being built out, new projects being won. That's when, those hands-on hardcore roles are really needed. Again, data is king. So seen a lot in like the data engineering, ML ops, like computer vision space to really track all of those like 3D vision principles. So a lot of these are having cameras and new optical sensors put into things. So it's having that alignment, which I guess is quite a niche skill set that I'm seeing quite a bit open up on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I see loads of stuff in like, sales and GTM. So, early stage organizations looking to scale, have that product strategic alignment. So those are like the three areas I'm seeing a lot of volume in at the moment.
There seems to be like every day there's a new AI startup, there's a new data startup, or there's a robotics kind of offshoot startup that seems to be appearing every day. Do you think teams are getting smaller but just more specialized, or do we need to, smaller but more generalized, or are we going more specialist first and then generalizing our skill set? Like, how is it working from what you're seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of really highly specialized skill set requirements, whether it's specific robotic manipulation and dexterity kind of projects and toolings, or like specific algorithms and vision modules you're working on. And I'm seeing that a lot more so because in a hardware environment, like cash and the allocation of it is so important because, hardware's more expensive than software, like realistically, and it's hard to fundraise for. So a lot of what I'm, I guess, seeing on that front is, yeah, people who needs really specific niche skill sets that are really specialized that sometimes don't exist. Like you want someone who's worked for 9 years in robotic manipulation for dexterous hands. There's maybe like 15 people who could do that. And they're
Wow.
probably hired by like the top engineering teams already leading those from the forefront. So if you're building a product from zero, you need to have some of that industrial experience and go to market strategy to build, or it's just going to be loads of failures for fun with no like growth.
It's funny actually, because I was just about to ask you as well, like what the talent pool is actually like. Are we talking hundreds or are we talking tens of people that you're kind of dealing with on a daily basis to try and sort of place into these roles?
I mean, it does depend on kind of the use case and the application as well. Like if there are teams who are building humanoid robots, they typically want someone who has that humanoid understanding of it having fingers or like 2 feet, because that's a big use case and impact that if you haven't worked on it, had the understanding of how that's going to work with path planning compared to a car on the road, that will change like how people develop. So yeah, from 0 to 1, it's a lot harder to find that talent, and I'm definitely seeing like the requirements for super deep niche skill sets, which makes it harder for everyone, but the fun of the game.
What from what you're seeing, like obviously if there's small talent pools, there's clearly going to be a larger requirement for these kinds of people and this sort of kind of skill set. Are you seeing that there's much sort of education? Like can people go into courses to do this? Is it learned from a very young age? Like, because I saw something interesting in saying that the next sort of generation of workers, essentially they're currently sat on an Xbox. They're currently sat on a PlayStation. They're dexterous with their gaming and they've got that kind of gaming mindset. Are they potentially the next round of engineers? And what are you seeing from a university level? Is university? I'm asking a lot of questions here, but like it's all kind of boiling down to the talent pool is small. How do we get more people into that pool?
And it's funny you touch on that, because when I was at the Humanoid Summit in London a few weeks ago, I was talking from a recruitment perspective to the audience, and this was actually something that I brought up, and I kind of highlighted that I don't think education in terms of university partnerships and the skill sets coming out of educational institutes are where they need to be on the most part to help mature the direction of where companies are going at the moment. I've seen some really cool like R&D engineers coming out with great theses, but there's no alignment to the products that are in the market at the moment. So how are they going to take that first step? See, I spoke a lot about, can we put, these robots into educational institutes, into universities, get people demoing, working with teleoperation from an earlier stage, so it's not so brand new and it's not so green for them when they do want to step into industry. Again, I speak to a lot of organizations who spin out of universities, and it's been like, hey, have you still got those partnerships to bring people in and do their master thesis with you and things like that? I think some people don't think of the alignment enough. They're like, oh, we know the universities will find great people, not, okay, are you actually partnered with them in their curriculum to make changes?
Yeah. I mean, there's a general sort of feeling and an argument that's been probably going on for quite a while now, but in the sense that the education system is broken. Like we don't, we're training children and educating children to be going into an industry that no longer exists. We're training them as if like, and educating them as if it's like the pre-2000s, and it's really not the case anymore. And it's shifting, faster and faster, and there's more innovation, like becoming quicker and quicker, and it'll only get quicker because the the learning curve is exponential with with ML and with robotics and general the like. It's weird. I wonder if, and you're just putting the point to you really, I wonder if the future of education is more in conjunction with enterprise. So if it's schools or educational sectors merging more with enterprise, and that almost, and it sounds a little bit weird, but the likes of Microsoft potentially having their own schools, essentially, like we're kind of, this is going to be the future of work. This is what you need to be learning, or is that too restrictive? I don't know.
I actually 100% agree that when you have people doing, entrepreneurships in residence and having those gap years and years in industry, I personally didn't do that, but especially in this type of environment and this new world we're stepping into, I think it's vital. Like if you're having the opportunity to work with an academy that is developing a product from zero, or going through hackathons, coding challenges, robotic what's it called, like competitions, it's all those things, having that real world evidential experience that does change the game. And we talk about like innovation and innovators, and that's what we need coming out of the education system. But people who need to innovate need to learn to build, fail, break and start again. And I feel like a lot of the time in education, the concept of failure is growth and like failure is okay. I think people forget about or don't kind of lean into enough. Like failure's class a bad grade in your course subject or whatever it is. Not okay, well, growth is actually failure that you learn from. And if we're talking about this new age of people coming into the workforce needing to be innovators, have a personal GitHub, go do projects in your spare time, do apprenticeships. And as you said, like Microsoft having their own programs, Amazon having their own like development programs for apprenticeships, I think they're so important. Like it's not all about a university check education anymore, obviously depending on skill sets and backgrounds. But yeah, it's this innovation mindset that we need to foster. And if we don't teach people that breaking and failing things is okay as long as you learn from it, we're going to be even further behind on the innovation piece as a country, let alone a generation.
I definitely feel that, like even with my son, he's 7 and he's totally into building. Like he's currently, it's Lego right now, but that will move into the digital realm and be something like Roblox or something Minecraft, something. Yeah, and that's it. And I think that's why Roblox is one of the biggest investments someone can make right now, because they're actually building that expertise for the future, which is quite interesting. But I guess there's the polar opposite of the argument as well. And for society generally, where are those soft skills going to come from? Because obviously we need to interact with each other. We need to be able to sell a product. We need to be able to market a product, like you said, that GTM kind of like role as well. Where do they sit? Because not everybody can be an engineer.
Believe you me, I guess that's where I sit. Like the last thing I could do is probably code or build for a living, because it's not where my skill set lies. But put me on a podcast, get me to talk, and I'm happy as Larry. And look, I think in the strategy GTM space, when you've got new companies emerging, they're taking a lot of people out of industry that have come from the unicorns and big players, have come from semiconductor backgrounds, or are working with hardware and AI in its early phases, like 20 years ago, before AI was really actually an intelligent system. So I think it's a tough one when it comes to GTM, because from like a recruitment hiring perspective, working with clients, they go, hey, I want someone who has sold this type of product before or has sat in this industry before. And as a consultant, you have to sit back and go, okay, so this product or this similar style product is across these type of companies. Will you only take people from this industry? No, it's actually more about the partnerships they've built in certain locations, whether it's DAC regions, USA build outs, the fundraising round size you've been involved with to build that strategy. So I think a lot of the requirements that come to me do link to the robotics background, even on a GTM piece. But I think part of our jobs are educating not necessarily always educating, but sometimes educating or consulting with hiring managers, saying, okay, so you might not find this, but what are those key points that matter to you most to get this strategy to market, which is what this person is you need. Like if they haven't worked on a 2-foot, 2-arm robot, well, they have partnered with the largest manufacturers and industrial teams across Europe. Same with the APAC regions. They were in early stage fundraising for X company. And it's finding the alignment in a slightly different way sometimes.
Yeah, because that's something that I think about quite often, you know, and especially with bringing up children as well, is that trying to find essentially, or trying to observe where their skill sets lie. You know, are they more interested in the hands-on building? And, you know, I'm sure there's lots of other parents as well, and, you know, that are kind of thinking about this. But there's a huge need, and I think it's a skill that's in decline, around this ability to be social, to be able to move people from A to B, be persuasive, be adaptable, be confident. And they're not exactly the traits that you usually find within industries like the ones you're dealing with. And I don't really want to say the words like, you know, extroversion and introversion or anything like that, because, you know, that's a completely different matter. But those kinds of social muscles, those confident muscles, you know, adaptability and persuasive muscles that we need to pull on to be able to get these to market. And, you know, obviously we're dealing with robotics and AI. We know it's the future. It's already here. It was talked about at, you know, Dartmouth, wherever it was in the 50s. We know it's been around for a long time. How can people be prepping, other than outside of educational institutions, if someone needs to relearn? Like, take myself, you know, I don't have a sort of like practical bone in my body really, but, you know, if I was to go, look, this is the opportunity, I need to relearn, where can I go, you know, to retrain, to rewire myself to be, you know, excuse the pun, but like rewire myself to be appropriate for that industry?
Now, that's a really interesting question, I think, actually. I don't think anyone's ever asked me something similar. And I think if I track this to like my background, I was very aware that the things I enjoy doing and I'm good at, I wanted to take into industry was networking, relationship building, talking and listening. So I
Absolutely.
walked into a careers meeting and I went, look, I'm good at these things. What do I do? And this careers advisor went, oh, HR, PR, recruitment, sales, that was easier than I thought, because I don't think we are taught to think about sales and strategy and business development style roles when we're bringing ourselves through education, which I think leans to a mindset of people that are coming into industry as well. Oh God, it's a really interesting question. I'm trying to think of how
It's
I phrase it, where I would send someone to go to like take or like bring on those skills. I think for me, I'm someone who throws myself into everything. Like I can't code, program, nothing for love nor money. But every time I see a robotics networking event, I'm there and I'm asking questions. And I think that's the best way to learn and like put yourself in that space, in that person's mindset. Like I don't think I could have done this 6-9 months ago to the extent I do. And it's just the more conversations you have, the more you learn, without saying I need to send you somewhere specific to learn that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you know, to be fair, it was an unfair question actually, because it's kind of putting you on the spot first and foremost, but secondly, it's a multifaceted kind of question really, because it's one of those where there is probably no right answer, but it's kind of just opinion based really, I guess. But what really I want to get to is this idea of, you know, people think that robots are coming to take their jobs, and you know, there is probably a place for those soft skills, but maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe we need a little bit of technicality in our skill set, but we also need those sort of human soft skills as well. But just regarding this argument at the moment around robots and AI coming to take our jobs, like just for context to the way I understand it right now, is that in terms of the technological adoption curve, we're not really yet at mass adoption when it comes to AI and robotics. We're not there yet, but we are quite close to the chasm that is going to be the difference between early adopters and mass adoption. And, you know, people keep talking about this being like, you know, now is the time, don't wait until it's too late. But how long is that chasm between before we get there? Is AI coming for people's jobs or not? Big question. I don't want to hold you to it, but it's a big question.
In short, simple words, I'm going to go no. There's a lot of facets to this. Like, I see AI. I mean, it's a buzzword. It's a massive topic because AI is everything from, you know, your co-pilot agent to like your AGI automated vision system. So like, I see it as like a task replacement more than a people replacement. And when I say task, I usually say it's like those low skilled, low value tasks, like banging out 60 follow-ups or whatever it is. But I always say that we're not being like replaced by AI, but I think people are being left behind by change. Like, if you're not willing to adapt, learn, innovate, change how we work, then yeah, AI technically will take your job. But then if you look at recruitment or doing podcasts 5 years ago, like in COVID days, to 5 years before that, completely different, like industries, ways of working, how we talk, how even today's gone. Like, I was like, hey, can't come to York, really sorry. Like 5 years ago, could we have done this like this? Probably not. I think the most important thing, though, about this, especially in the robotics industry, is that I see it as a robotics evolution or a job evolution, right? So where, how many years ago we needed checkers on Tesco's scanning your meal deals, well, now you need someone who's going to maintain that autonomous robotic system that's doing it for you. So you don't need a cashier, but you need a maintenance engineer, right? So they haven't actually got rid of a job, they've just changed what they need. Same as black cab drivers. Black cab drivers went, hey, everyone's going to take our jobs with Uber. Well, there's still black cabs and there's still Uber, right? And no one's autonomously driving everywhere yet. So there's a lot of caveats to it and a lot of changes and processes to happen. But I definitely think one of the most important factor with existing workforces is that they're offered those upskilling opportunities to retain but retrain staff. Like, if you've hired someone who's, you know, a cashier and has worked really well for you for 10 years, offer them a training program that's going to keep them in your business. You don't have the cost of losing someone and rehiring someone. They already know your platforms, your models, and they're already invested in your pension scheme or whatever it is. But they're staying in your business. The headcount's not changing. You're just probably actually giving them a little bit of a pay bump, reskilling them so they're learning something new. And yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more to train them, but it's going to cost you less than it is to sack someone and refill that whole position from zero.
That's something that comes up a lot when I speak to recruitment, actually, recruitment individuals, is this idea of retention is better than, you know, just going out to the market again and spending, you know, tens of thousands potentially in filling that role, because there is a gap between you know, taking that person on and actually seeing a return on investment from that person in the workplace. But just coming back to those people that potentially will upskill, you know, what are the attributes of a person, or what are the attributes of a person that people need to develop in order to be ready for change? Because, you know, there's, you know, I speak to plenty of people that are potentially in their 60s, in their 70s, and they're quite stubborn to change. You know, they're quite, you know, resistant of change, or they're potentially quite Luddite type, you know. But the younger people in their 30s, in their 40s, you know, they've still got a lot of work years left in them. What attributes of a person do you like to see, first and foremost, and then what do you think the industry needs for people to be ready for change?
I think a massive part of it is like openness and curiosity. I think as recruiters or like people who are quite social, we're naturally quite curious. We ask a lot of questions, and usually an answer to a question isn't enough. There's a why or a how to it. And I think that innate curiosity drives a lot of innovation and change. If people question things and the status quo of why something's being done, they can then come to an understanding of why there needs to be change. So I think trying to instill that concept of, curiosity in people is quite hard because it's a soft skill. But like, that's how I kind of found robotics. I worked in quite a generic software data recruitment team, and I was seeing all this news about ChatGPT and LLMs and chatbots being all the rage. And I was like, cool, but like, don't think I'll do that for like 40 years as a career. And then I saw this like robotics fundraising come through, and I was like, well, let's keep following the news with that. I was curious. I kept, looking at these articles, seeing the innovation and changes being made, and thought, that's what I want to do. And that's why I have,
Why?
what
Why? What was it about it that interested you so much?
the amount of money being pumped into some of these companies was like things I
Right.
hadn't seen in software and data houses, hundreds of millions investments in single rounds. Again, I think, when you see things like a robot dog or a little four-wheeled robot delivering people's Uber Eats, to me, it got me interested. Maybe I am in a generation where I'm naturally more curious or like to ask those questions. But for me, I was like, that's something I haven't seen before. Let's find out more about it. And yeah,
So
that's kind of,
you're naturally curious then.
maybe I am just naturally curious. Maybe recruitment has made me curious with my years. But yeah, I think the problem is people who just blindly accept. Like if you see a
Mm.
robot and go, cool, that's on the road now. It's not okay. Well, why is that on the road?
I guess it's spotting opportunity early as well, though, isn't it? Because like like many evangelists of sort of AI and robotics, these things have been around for a long time. And they've been around for decades even. But now that they're kind of getting to the point of general purpose technologies being like things like ChatGPT, how does one spot an opportunity early? Obviously we're kind of moving away from the sort of like the recruitment kind of side, but from more generic people people who want to potentially take advantage of the new technologies and make some money from it and be successful in those industries. What do they need to do to, other than just be curious, what do they need to practically do to be ready for that, or to try and spot something that they're potentially interested in?
I guess it's having that interest. Like if you're not interested in it, there's no point in following something that's booming if you genuinely don't care about it. And that was, I guess, maybe how I felt about the large language model side. I was like, cool, I understand why there's all this drive of interest towards it, but maybe it's not for me. And that's not saying there isn't amazing growth in it and there isn't amazing opportunity that I could have followed, but maybe it just wasn't something that I decided my curiosity should be directioned at. It doesn't mean robotics is
Mm.
the only new industry like that's booming right now. It's people spotting where their interest lies mixed with it. Like if you're not interested, you're not going to be curious. I don't think if you put me in, I don't know, like an insurance team, I'd be as excited about it as I am with this because I have a genuine interest. I don't need to pretend to be curious
Mm.
because I am. So I think when you're looking at people either coming into this new generation of the workforce or even those like spinning down from it, like it's always down to the innovation and the build. I saw something, I can't remember if it was on YouTube or a podcast, and it was talking about if you build, you're like already 10 steps ahead of everyone else when
Mm.
you're looking for a job. And it's not because you're building, it's because you're taking different approaches to try something and be accepting of failure, which naturally makes you ask more questions.
Mm.
So it's like
Yeah, no,
wanting to be a builder and a driver that I think causes the change. If you don't want it, you can't force yourself to do it.
I think
Yeah.
that's interesting, and I think that's true. Actually, I think there's certain things that even for me, like I just will not never be interested in them because it just doesn't light my fire. It doesn't get me going, kind of thing. What are you excited by with the industry in terms of where it's going? What's exciting you at the moment?
Oh God, what's not? Well, I think a lot of the teams who are, fundraising and going into general purpose and productionizing their robots, I'm really excited to see how they try and start this main mass production. I mean, I know teams like Agility have their robots in GXO logistics warehouses and stuff, but I think it's really the mass production and acceptance that I'm really looking forward to see. Like I've got loads of really cool teams who deploy things and build things all across the world, and it's nice seeing them be demoed and like actually go to the client site. But I think the mass production and adoption piece is going to be really interesting. Like there's the odd robot in Morrison's that's scanning and checking shelves. What about when there's 15 of them and they're in every Morrison's and you
Mm.
see them every day? That's what I think really excites me, is just kind of really seeing it come to fruition in the real world on a wide scale, not just your odd service centre, your odd autonomous salad bar or whatever it's going to be.
Do you think there's going to be less and less requirement for a human in the loop?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even talking to teams who are like growing out teleoperation functions and things like that. I mean, when you start off, yeah, maybe you have 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 for human robot interaction. But as time goes on, you envision that to be 1-to-20 or 1-to-30 for best level of operation, but also that like HRI factor.
And let's say someone has decided to retrain, and they're ready to potentially take a leap of faith into a new industry that they've kind of been training for. Where's good? Where's the opportunity lying at the moment? You don't have to name companies, but areas of the UK, or even obviously we know the US is huge. We know China's huge, but obviously for obvious reasons might not be an attractive proposition for people to move to. Where's good? Like, where are the opportunities? Like, what's the opportunity hotbed at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, like, I can throw you Silicon Valley because, like, why not? I see a lot of growth in the DACH region. Like, Germany has been a massive, massive hub for growth, not just like startups and people receiving funding, but existing companies building new HQs and deployment centres. Um, in the UK, funnily enough, like Milton Keynes actually pretty good, like around like Cranfield University. A lot because they're partnered with like the airports, they have that ability to bring in autonomous systems
Mm.
on loops or circuits, so it's more of a controlled environment. So yeah, anything close to a large airport in the UK is actually pretty good. If you want
Oh
to go all
wow.
the way up north or all the way down south, there are some really cool subsea robotics teams that are doing some really, really interesting work. So definitely some innovation across the UK in subsea robots. Personally, I stay far away from the warfare and defence piece,
I
more or
was
less.
going to ask you about that. That was going to be my next point. I was like, how much are you doing with the military right now? Because I know there's a massive thing around defense and what have you. Do you just stay away from that completely? Do you?
I mean, yes and no. So we actually have a team within one of our brands here that focuses quite heavily on aviation, aerospace. So they do a lot more work on like the drone ASV side of it, like unmanned aerial vehicles, things like that. Um, I think for me, it's just the use case that brings questions when you're recruiting for it, whether it's
Mm.
individuals feeling not comfortable about it being for specific use cases or in active warfare. Again, if it's like research intelligence, people are typically more open to it, but it's when it's on field, it's, people don't seem so open to it unless they specifically come from that background. And
Mm.
I think when you've partnered with organizations across the world, from Ukrainian teams, German teams, UK teams, Middle Eastern teams, getting involved with that can be quite sticky when you have varied client bases that you don't want to look or view a certain way.
It's a bit of almost like, do you want to talk about it or don't you? But that's I totally get that.
And I think it's a big enough market that like you can probably look into most areas without having to step into that so specifically. Not saying there aren't amazing teams, but I'm sure focus purely on
mm.
defense and like warfare recruitment. But yeah, maybe it's not where I have my, there you go, I don't have my interest and drive in that industry, so maybe my curiosity isn't there as much as it is with the other realms of robotics.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Is there something that is important that we need to talk about that we haven't covered?
Everything's important. What haven't we covered? No, I think the thing that I like to touch on, and when we talk about this AI taking people's jobs, we've spoken a lot about it from the industry perspective, but I think as salespeople, we hear about it a lot in recruitment. They're like, "Oh, but AI can just automate your job," and like, where's your value now? And I
Mm.
think the thing that's interesting for me is everyone can use an AI to shortlist and scan and write cover sheets and give you a percentage confidence this person's going to get the job or whatever. But I just think like people buy from people, right? You're either going to love me or you're going to hate me. Like, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, or I'd be a mug or an AI bot, and I'm none of those. You either want to work with me because you see the value in how I negotiate, how I partner, how I see your value, then putting an AI bot to do it. Look, AI can take the admin out of recruiting. I still think there's a bit of like an art to what we do.
I completely agree with you, by the way, and you're kind of touching on something that's really important to me actually there as well. Like I personally believe, like I come from a performing arts background, and I think performance is generally the last human advantage that we have. You know, we have AI to write content, we have AI to do all those things, and I think generally the way we perform something, and I don't mean being fake or putting on a mask or anything like that. It's, I think, just the way we transfer energy, like how we're doing this now, you know, requires an element of performance, and it's that performative element that will basically differentiate you. Like whether you work in sales, marketing, robotics, whatever, it doesn't matter. How you perform, how you show up, how you manage that is essentially what's going to be really, really important moving forward. But that's just my opinion. But you touched on that, and it was kind of like, that's exactly what I believe. But so I was bound to pop up. But yeah, it's funny because obviously recruitment is a hugely human industry. It's people buy from people. You're absolutely right. I would take that further, and you know, people buy from people they know, like, and trust, but also they need to believe in them. Like, and how do you get a point? You know, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around, like, what is it that creates belief in knowing that, you know, why should I go to Danielle rather than someone else who's hiring in the space?
We've actually touched on two really important points there. One being belief, which I'll get to, and the other one being trust. So, like, I always say that trust and relationships is how I run my business and what I do. Like, if you don't trust me and have faith in what I do and what I can bring to the table, you're never going to work with me. And even if you are, our relationship is not going to be fruitful. It's not going to be a partnership. And that's where we need to be. Otherwise, you're working with 15 agencies and they're what I call bums on seats, right? You're just chucking profiles over for the sake of a no win, no fee scenario. And that's just not how I believe in, like, conducive growth. I think there's so many great recruiters and so many maybe not so great recruiters out there, but there are enough of us that we can probably, you know, hire the right people for you. So it's okay, who out of these people do we trust to do this job and do it well and do it right? And who do I then want to work with, right? You can have someone who's painting the best CVs. They're an absolute to speak to every day, right? Or you could be like, hey, like, this person's quite cool and we get on really well. And that for me is probably where I have my most successes, but enjoy what I do the most. It's going to events, meeting someone and going, oh, I'm going for drinks after with someone who wasn't here. Let's introduce you. Or yeah, being introduced by other people. It's how I got myself at the Humanoid Summit. Someone I know in Sweden who wasn't even going introduced me to the founder who invited me. So like it's a circular economy.
Nice.
Circular economy. And then you said the belief piece. And I think the biggest thing with belief, if you don't believe in yourself, no one's going to believe in you, right? Like, I back myself wholeheartedly. I think you have to back yourself because no one else will. And that's the case of, be honest if you don't know, because you're going to get more buy-in. If someone goes, oh, do you know this? And you say, yeah, I asked you a question about it and you can't follow on. Well, you've just damaged your relationship from the offset. If they say, oh, okay, have you recruited this position before? Have you worked with this specific skill set? The answer is, yeah, I have, and justify why. Or, oh, no, I haven't. Or, I've worked with this, but not that. Tell me how it differs. Show that you're interested in what they're doing and they're building, because otherwise you're just a salesperson, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, belief in yourself is a massive thing. Like, you've got to know why you're good at what you do and why someone should work with you. And if you can't justify that, you're probably not the right person to be talking to.
I think it's confidence, isn't it? Like that confidence is transferable, isn't it? Like if you're confident in your ability and you believe, you know, that will transfer over to your potential partner, your potential client. That's really, really interesting. I've loved this conversation. This has been really good, but sadly we're kind of drawing to a time now. Where can people get a hold of you, Danielle, and you know the company? How can they get in touch?
You can always get hold of me on LinkedIn. That's Danielle Blake on LinkedIn, the robotics recruiter. And then, yeah, I've got email address, which would be d.blake@lawrenceharvey.com, and then a UK and European phone number that I can just pass as a screen recording at the bottom because no one's going to listen to me reeling that off. And again, organisation, we're a business called Lawrence Harvey. So if you look at Lawrence Harvey International, you'll be able to find all of our non-competing brands from technology, clean tech to life sciences.
Well, I'm looking forward to some updates on that now. I'm following it. I'm going to look for those updates, and I'll be passing them on to people I think will enjoy them. So, but look, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak today.
Excellent. Take care.
Thanks so much.